And now we shift to a different topic that's been dividing Americans as we look at the political bromance between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. This week, the president has been giving the Prime Minister a boost ahead of his elections next month. The most controversial boost was the signing of a proclamation formally recognizing Israel's 1981 unilateral annexation of Syria's Golan Heights. But as the bond between them tightens, there is growing criticism in America of the actions of the Netanyahu government. But he fiercely criticized those who challenge some aspects of support for the Israeli government. In an address to the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee, this is what he said.
Those who seek to defame this great organization, AIPAC, those who seek to undermine American support for Israel, they must be confronted. Despite what they claim, they do not merely criticize the policies of Israel's government. That happens every 5 minutes. They do something else. They spew venom that has long been directed at the Jewish people.
But support for his government from America's Jewish community is flagging, and we're going to look into the whys and wherefores of this with the author and a deputy Washington editor at the New York Times, Jonathan Weisman. He joins us from Washington, in fact. Welcome to the program, Jonathan.
Thank you, Christiane.
So let's just start with this controversial move by President Trump to sign off on the accepting the annexation of the Golan Heights. Why? I mean, it's obviously a problem in international law. The UN, doesn't recognize this move and doesn't recognize Israel's ownership of the Golan Heights. What, though, does it mean in terms of what you're talking about and what seems to be arising, the sort of growing schism between American Jews and Israeli Jews and criticisms of this Netanyahu government, per se?
Well, let's look at the response. I mean, after President Trump recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel, a very senior Israeli official said that if he can recognize the Golan Heights as part of Israel, he will recognize other occupied territory as parts of Israel. There will be a ripple effect, and that ripple effect, once again, is going to further what is developing into a rift between American Jews and Israeli Jews. I mean, remember, there's obviously multiplicity of opinions in American Jewry and Israeli Jewry, but the majority of American Jews are not fond of President Trump, and the majority of Israeli Jews really like President Trump. Right there is how this rift is really manifesting itself politically now.
This schism that you're talking about and all the politics around it, does that make peace more or less likely? And particularly the sort of peace bond between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu that we keep believing is going to be unveiled anytime soon?
Well, I think the schism that we're talking about is in part because there is no sense that there is any real opportunity for peace, that there really is any pressure on the Israelis to come to the table with the Palestinians and for the Palestinians to come to the table with Israel as well. That, for so many young Jews, they've been talked to about a two-state solution, about eventually giving Palestinians a land that they could call their own. But in fact, they have seen no movement toward this at all. And the talk of a two-state solution, the talk of a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians feels now just far-fetched. It's like a big joke.
And getting back to the politics and what you said about how American Jews feel about Trump versus Israeli Jews feeling about Trump, clearly, I don't know whether you would agree, but many believe that this recent visit and what President Trump has done regarding Golan and other things is designed to give Benjamin Netanyahu a boost in the elections, which are happening next month. And also, as we know it, this is happening as the Attorney General of Israel say he plans to indict Netanyahu in a multiple corruption case. And J Street, which is the other Jewish group in the United States, sort of not AIPAC, but J Street, says that it's made clear that their joint embrace of, quote, demagogic ethnonationalism stands in direct contradiction to the shared democratic values that have long been at the heart of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Trump is obviously seeking to hand Netanyahu an electoral boost and to pander to his own right-wing base. And this at a time when even AIPAC criticized Netanyahu last month for allying himself with the extreme right party known as Jewish Power. I mean, I don't know, unpick all that. It's very complex.
It is complex, but it's, it's not that complex. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there is a rising kind of ethno-nationalism, a kind of intolerant, authoritarian streak that is emerging from Warsaw to Washington, from Budapest to Brasilia, and in fact in Jerusalem. I mean, that this kind of nationalist sentiment is the mark of a new generation of leadership right now, all over the world. And Netanyahu, who is at the one hand the head of state of the Jewish state, is also aligned with this movement. That's why you've seen him with Viktor Orban, the head of Hungary, who just was reelected on a fairly flagrantly anti-Semitic campaign. He has aligned himself with Duterte in the Philippines. He has aligned himself with Bolsonaro in Brazil. This is not an isolated thing, and it's made, I think, a lot of American Jews very, very unsteady.
It is actually extraordinary. It is actually extraordinary that, because when you point out that Prime Minister Netanyahu has aligned himself with such a government and such a party in Hungary that has run on an anti-Semitic platform, or at least has been accused of it. How do Israeli Jews even react to that?
Well, I mean, I think that there is, there's a division. There are, I call it the internationalist Jews and the tribalist Jews. The tribalist Jews are much more focused on Israel and what is best for Israeli security. They are willing to take compromises in values or ethics in exchange for anything that they feel bolsters the security of the Jewish state. But there is also, especially in the United States, a strong sense of Jewish values that feel challenged right now by the actions of the Israeli government and the prime minister. Because now, Jews in America are raised on the notion that we welcome strangers, that we have our arms open, and we look at the actions of the government in the United States and the government in Israel and see something that seems to fly in the face of what we were always taught were Jewish values: welcoming the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt.
And what about now what seems to have come to roost in the Democratic Party? There's now a huge controversy over where, Democrats stand on this issue. And of course, it's all sort of erupted since the freshman Congresswoman Ilhan Omar last month, speaking in Washington, she said,
"We get to be labeled in something, and that ends the discussion because we end up defending that, and nobody ever gets to have the broader debate of what is happening with Palestine." So for me, I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it is okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country.
What do you make of that? And then the subsequent, jumping on that by obviously even members of the Democratic Party, but the Republicans now and President Trump saying, see, the Democrats are no friends of the Jewish community. They should come to our side. He's even used the word Jexodus.
Yeah, I think a lot of American Jews are very unsettled by all of these developments. I mean, the fact that Representative Omar talked about allegiance to a foreign power, foreign country, there's no question that that raises these hoary myths about Jews having dual allegiances. If she had just said support for a foreign country, it would have had a very different effect. but allegiance to a foreign country feels like an old anti-Semitic trope about dual allegiances, that Jews are always some kind of fifth column waiting to rise up against their host nation. It's a notion that you see in white nationalism all the time. At the same time, I think most Jews are very uncomfortable with the politicization of anti-Semitism, this use by President Trump and many Republicans and some Democrats of what Omar said to try to drive a rift, a wedge between the liberal wing of the Democratic Party and the Jewish people. It feels like anti-Semitism has become a politicized weapon.
Where does this end up for American Jews, for, for their relationship also with Israel, and Israeli Jews? I mean, there's this conflict between where they, what they're thinking right now about all of this, as you say, politicization of this whole issue. Where does it end up?
Well, look, about 69% of American Jews voted for Barack Obama's reelection. About 72% voted for Hillary Clinton, and then about 79% voted for Democrats in the 2018 midterm elections. The idea that there is some jexodus, some exodus of Jews from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party at this point is farcical. It doesn't seem to exist. We'll see what happens in 2020, but I don't see much evidence. I do think that the gap between American Jewry and Israeli Jewry is only widening. Mm-hmm. We knew that was going to, I kind of knew that was going to happen in this election campaign, that this election campaign in Israel might challenge Jewish sense of ethics in the United States. And we have seen that when Netanyahu paired with an openly racist party in Israel. And I think that it is, as long as the Israeli Jews and the American Jews don't really feel like they need each other, then I'm not sure where any impetus will come from repairing this schism. And remember, it's all generational. Older Jews still feel very, very strongly about their support for the Jewish state. But younger Jews are really feeling differently now.
Right. We will continue to keep an eye on it. It's really important. Thank you, Jonathan Weissman. And that's it for our program tonight. Thanks for watching.